Good Saturday morning that it is. And what are we looking at? Human Genome Sciences. What time is it? 8:46 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. 7/7/2012 is the date. And what we have before us is a weekly human genome chart, MMT. And what we would like to show you is that there was rumor that Glaxo was going to buy the company. You got that big weekly move, okay? And you're setting up a breakout, and there is rumor mill running around right now. The rumor mill is that Celgene Corp is one of two companies discussing whether to bid for Human Genome Sciences Inc., which seeks an alternative to a hostile takeover bid from GlaxoSmithKline PLC. What we have is conventional wisdom among investors that human genome is that some people think that they should have took that $13 hostile bid, but they said no. And basically they didn't feel that way about it, and I don't blame them. They spent their whole lifetime career in that company, and it is worth a lot more than that when you add up what the dollar increments would be when it's all said and done and forward looking. So there is rumor that Celgene and maybe another company is out there. But let's talk a little bit more about what it would do to the price. Right now, behind here, I'm going to show you a bid and ask. We had a close right here of 13.62, but on Friday and after hours, you got a bid of 14.16 by 14.44. And what does that mean? That means that if there is any truth to this, then that means that the prices would want to break higher on a weekly level, that once the weekly breakout occurred, you have pulled back, and now how do we get all the way up here in this weekly area? And I'm going to draw a trend line for my other MMTs to understand that the price of 21, let's say, this is on a weekly, so let's say 21.55 right there, and here's 20.22. We'll go right in here at 18.39. Of course, on the lower end of things, there's 16.93, but nonetheless, when you clear $15.19 on a weekly, because that's what this is this time and period. The time in the period here on this big weekly sell down, they really hammered this thing from 21.57 down to the low of this weekly low on 7/31 of 2011 to $15. And that was a 7/31 calendar year 2011. Now, let us remember one thing. We are in today's date, 7/7/2012, almost a year later, and you can see that that high, that open was 21.34, 21.57, and they slammed it down to $15. So as it was falling in price, well, then Glaxo's feeling pretty good. Well, hey, I could buy this company for a really cheap price. But now when they talk about $13 a share after it got marked down to $6 and whatever it was, 53 cents. I'm drawing this weekly movement because MMTs, what we're going to be looking for is how do we get through that resistance level of this $15.19, and that the higher end of that weekly range of that sell down was 21.34. How that breakout from this fade back right here, yeah, you could say on a weekly level, from a public chart view, that's what the public will look at. Of course, we do business quite different, but the thing about it is that it's where this price action is going to break right up here to this level. And remember, it's all standard. That's 1839 right there. So how do you get a $4 breakout and a weekly breakout from an opening gap? Let's say that this goes higher. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. We know that the 52-week high was 15.49. We know that. And there are many other things that we know, such as on balance volume that we use in the SMF system. And when we look at the 10-day on balance volume right now, it's negative in our system, MMTs, in our system, and you know what it means. It's negative. It actually increased in the week of 7/1 of 2012 on a 10-day total now, MMT. And what do I mean by that? That's that longer day total. That's 2 sets of 5. But what I would like you to know is that it was negative 90 million in our system. And we're going to be looking for a big change on that 10-day on balance volume. But when we get down to where the current volume on 6/24 week was negative only 12 million, we actually got positive during the week of 8.9 million. And they worked off that negative 12 million to positive 8.9 million based on the overall net of 7/1 week, that it ended up that way. And so basically what we will be discussing is how that negative on balance volume is a major player. And when you start looking out over a 50-day total of on balance negative volume, MMTs, it's 140 million. No, it's not. It's 170 million at the moment of the calendar week of 7/1 of 2012. Now, when they burn that down, of course the equity would go higher and we would have a breakout all the way back up there to challenge these weekly highs, MMTs. So we get through that 7/31/2011 low of $15. That weekly volume at that time was 8.4 million on a weekly level now, as far as your public volume goes, because that's what it was. So what we're looking at is how that news, if there's truth to it. They also have a diabetes drug that they could come out with approval for at any time, and they do. And that would equal another $1 billion in sales for Human Genome, as it would, MMT. And the thing about these deal makers and how they wanted to do, I mean, Glaxo was trying to replace the entire board at Human Genome. I mean, how nice is that? Look, cutthroat business is cutthroat business, and the world should know what kind of world we live in. Glaxo just had some very bad things. They got fined $3 billion for doing things, well, that they had to agree to pay $3 billion in fines for doing wrong things. So when we take a look at Human Genome and what it's worth, and Celgene has been one of the biotechnology's most reliable growth stocks, with a market value of nearly $29 billion. Okay, so when you take a look at their market cap, you take a look at the couple of drugs that they've done well with, there is a fit there with Human Genome, whether that happens or not, but it is definitely a fit in the respect of the two companies, those two. Okay, and there's been a lot of deal making, and Celgene is based in Summit, New Jersey. Okay, and I just want you to know, MMTs, the ones that weren't here today on Saturday, that this news was breaking news that MMT Goalie brought to our attention right away. And so therefore, what we're looking at here on the weekly level, MMT, is how we get the bigger weekly breakout bar. So when I go back over here and I go to this week right here, MMT, this is going to be 4/15 of 2012, and you open at 722. The high is 1474. The low, they clocked that low very quickly at, and this was done on 4/15. The low for that week was 701, but guess what the weekly close was on 1.19.8 million is that it was 1436 at the time. So let's be clear to that. 1549 during the week of 422 was the highs of the calendar 2012 high. So what we look for is what kind of premium breakout above that 52-week high of 15.49. If we break out that 6 handles where the volume weighted average price is right around 21, 22, or whatever it is, it's going to be the high end of this weekly bar at 21.55, that trend line that I've drawn right here. And when does the majority part of the breakout happen? And one of the things that we would say, like any weekly breakout, is that the first weekly breakout on the news starts like that. The second round's of news and the deal making, who knows if there's a bidding price for, but somebody in the biotech land, as we've always said, is ready to make a deal. And so between all the parties that are involved, we are going to be looking for increased headlines around the subject. But most importantly is, how do I break up through all these weekly moving averages, and how does this weekly buy signal that it has, it doesn't have a sell signal, and it's been working that off all year, and it really helped it get up in here. You know, I mean, that's what the public looks like. I mean, it's got a positive 0.71 MMT as far as where that would work. Now, when you do break out, and you do break out from a standard level now, is what we care about is on that 1549 calendar year high is how we get $6 above that breakout of that first calendar year high. And what would be the time series? What would be the news to drive it? And or what would be higher offers for the company as far as a buyout? And or let us not forget that we're in clinical trials. Glaxo and Human Genome are in big clinical trials right now. Okay. And they're looking at getting a couple, drugs with like diabetes, things that fit Celgene's library of things that they do. So none of these companies were available for comment on Friday, MMTs, because they weren't. All right. And let us not forget that lupus is the first drug that has a treatment to it in the last 50 years. Okay. And Human Genome and Glaxo are working on some new drugs in late clinical stage trials that would add to the top line for Human Genome. So once again, for the MMTs that were not here, we're looking how do we break above the 1549 and break all the way up here to this weekly bar. This is that upper trend line there. But there are several others in our other system that we have to get through here. But these are going to be points of interest, and it's going to be this weekly bar. And once we do break out, we're going to be looking for the on-balance volume correction. Once again, major headlines. There are many rumors out here. We don't know if they're true, and Reuters is the one that's come out with the news on Celgene Corp as one of the 2 companies discussing whether to bid for Human Genome Sciences, Inc., which seeks an alternative to a hostile bid by the British drug maker GlaxoSmithKline, the one that was just fined $3 billion for the way they were doing business. Now, we'll find out who comes out on top and what the fair price of this company is. Most importantly, MMTs, is what those options would be worth at that volume weighted average where this breakdown was up here of 21.55. It can go higher, it just depends. We're going to have to find out how the rumor mill would add to the weekly breakout. That's the update on the Human Genome news with Celgene Corp based in Summit, New Jersey.